Hello students, Teacher Kyle here with Explore English. Explore English offers weekly free YouTube lessons on English grammar, conversation, reading, and writing. We're going to provide you with skills and exercises that'll help improve your fluency as well as your accuracy. Some lessons can be focused a little more on grammar, while other lessons will be more on conversational English or cultural topics. Today we're going to start with a grammar topic. We're talking about the passive voice. Have you ever looked at a sentence and you've seen it written two different ways, but it really means the same thing? John wrote a letter, right? A letter was written by John. We're going to talk about the distinctions about why we use active voice, John wrote a letter, versus the passive voice, a letter was written by John. We're going to start with a little bit of a warm-up, so we're going to practice some tongue twisters. These are great ways to get your brain and your mouth kind of moving and warmed up. So let's look at our first tongue twister. Slim, slam, slap. So what I would like you to do is say this repeatedly until it starts to sound funny. Slim, slam, slap. Slim, slam, slap. Slim, slam, slap. Slim, slam, slap. Keep going. So that tongue twister focuses on a consonant blend, right? The S and the L. Sl, sul. Let's look at our second one. He threw 3 free throws. So here we're focused on the theta sound, T-H. Notice how my tongue is on the tip of my teeth. So you might be asking, what are passive sentences? Passive sentences emphasize the result of an action. The action is at the beginning of the sentence. Here's an example. Thousands of people were killed by the tsunami. This is a passive sentence. Let me give you an example of an active sentence. The tsunami killed thousands of people. Here's another example. The car was stolen by a teenager. That was a passive sentence. The active sentence is, a teenager stole the car. When it comes to English verbs, in many sentences we have a doer and a receiver. In an active sentence, the doer is the subject. John writes a short story every December. All right? The doer. Who is doing this action? Who is doing the writing? John is. And John is the subject. This is an active sentence. The receiver, right? The thing receiving the action is a short story. That's the thing, right? He's writing something. So in this situation, the receiver is the short story. A passive sentence would be, a short story is written by John every December. what we've done is we've switched the doer and the receiver. How do we make a passive sentence? So there are different ways we make passive based on the verb tense, but the biggest thing is you're going to want to add the verb be to the sentence. Then you're going to change the be verb so that it matches the new subject, the result. Then you're going to put the verb in the right tense. Here's an example of a past tense sentence. The boys ate the cake. And the passive, the cake was eaten by the boys. Passive sentences usually have by when describing who did the action. Here's an example. The glass vase was made by the woman from Japan. So we're using by to represent who did the action. In today's lesson, we have a reading/listening activity, but before we begin that, we need to talk a little bit about subject, verb, and object. This will help you understand how to use the passive voice and why we use the passive voice. So, in a sentence with a transitive verb, that is a verb that takes an object, we have a subject, a verb, and an object. Let's look at an example of a sentence. The boy kicked the ball. What's the subject of this sentence? The boy. The verb is kicked. And to find the object, you want to figure out what thing or person receives the action of the verb. So, what I like to do is I like to use the question, what? So, the boy kicked what? The ball. The ball is the object. The boy kicked the ball. So that's an example of an active sentence where the doer or the agent is in the subject. In a passive sentence, we want to switch the object and the subject, right? The thing that is the object becomes the subject of the sentence. The ball was kicked by the boy. The subject of this passive sentence is the ball, and the verb is was kicked. Keep in mind, we don't always need to say the doer or the agent, right? We don't always need to use by. Sometimes we don't know who the doer or the agent is, right? Here's an example. An active sentence. Someone broke my window last night. So here, someone is the subject. The verb is broke. Broke what? My window. My window is the object. Now in this sentence, we really don't know who the doer is, right? Someone. So if we make a passive sentence, we can just get rid of that information, right? My window was broken last night. Who knows who did it, right? We don't know. So you don't need to say, my window was broken by someone last night. Clearly, someone or something broke your window. It didn't magically break itself. In other situations, we just don't care who the actor or the doer is. It doesn't matter. This house was built in 1955. In this situation, we really don't care who built it, right? Clearly, some construction workers, some builders, some people built the house, but that's not really important. The important information is that the house was built in 1955. Another example of a passive sentence where we don't need by, or we don't need to talk about the doer or the agent, is the verb bear. bear, bore, born. This is an example of a sentence we almost always say in passive because everybody already knows the agent or the doer. I was born on January 25th, 1984. That is a passive sentence. Really, I received that action. The doer of that action was my mother, right? You never hear people go around saying, hey, when were you born? Oh, my mother bore me in January 1984. That's a very strange sentence. So that is a perfect example of a situation where we always know who the doer or the agent is. And it's just needless information to say that your mother, right, bore you in whatever year you were born. We have a reading coming up. The reading, the first time around, will be given to you in an active form. So most of the sentences are going to be active. The second time you hear the reading, I've switched a lot of the sentences from active to passive. So try and pay attention to the object, right, in the active sentences. And then when you see them again, you'll see them in the subject position, okay? Pay attention to that, right? Subject, verb, object. Before we begin the reading, I'd like to go over a little bit of vocabulary. Pride and joy. So this is a phrase we use that means someone or something that makes someone very proud and happy, right? Your children can be your pride and joy. Your business can be your pride and joy. Maybe your artwork could be your pride and joy. Number 2, diligently. So this is to be steady, focused, energetic, right? To offer an energetic effort. Notice the adverb is diligently and the adjective is diligent. Stocked. Stocked. In this context, we're using it to mean the inventory of goods of a merchant or manufacturer, right? So if they keep something in stock or they stocked their shelves with the newest iPhone, right? That's their inventory of goods, the things that they sell. Sense of duty. This is a motivating awareness of ethical responsibility. A good synonym for this is a sense of right and wrong. Robbed. To take something away from by force. To steal from. This can mean a mugging, like someone steals from you directly, usually with a weapon. But it also means a place, right? Like a bank can be robbed, a museum can be robbed. Snatched. This is a synonym for stole. Heirloom. Something of special value handed down from one generation to another. So many families have heirlooms. Could be a pocket watch, could be a brooch that a woman would wear. It could be a lot of different things. Sometimes guns are heirlooms, old combs, right? Things from the family. Let's begin the reading. My father owns an electronics store. He wakes up early every day to open the store. He considers it his pride and joy. Being a business owner was always a dream of his. He works diligently to make sure the store is clean and always stocked with the latest devices. He has a strong sense of duty due to his many years of service in the Navy. Unfortunately, last night some people robbed the electronics store. They broke a window. They stole 5 televisions and 12 computers. Sadly, they snatched my dad's pocket watch from his desk. It was an heirloom given to him by his father. It was supposed to be passed on to me. Finally, they stole all of the money in the safe. I really hope the pocket watch will be recovered. Most of the sentences in the last reading were in the active. There were a couple in passive, but for the most part, that reading was strictly in the active voice. we're going to take a look at the same reading but using passive. But before that, I do want to talk a little bit about the verbs and how we actually change the verbs from the active to the passive. So we focused a lot of the earlier lesson on talking about subject, verb, object, but we didn't talk a lot about how you actually form the passive in terms of the verb. What form of the verb do you need? When you make a passive sentence, you always want to use the past participle, okay? Sometimes it's known as verb 3. So for example, the verb steal, which we saw a lot of in the reading. The base verb, verb 1, is steal. The past, verb 2, is stole. And the past participle, verb 3, is stolen. So in the passive sentences, we're going to want to use stolen. Okay, another example, the verb eat, right? Base verb, verb 1, eat. Past, verb 2, ate. And the past participle, verb 3, eaten. So a passive sentence that uses eat is going to be written, the food was eaten, right? The cake was eaten. So you want to always make sure you're using that past participle, verb 3. Now that we got that out of the way, let's look at the same reading. There's parts of it that will stay active, and there's a big chunk where I've changed it into the passive, okay? So I'm going to take away the active, passive notices at the bottom, and I want you to think in your mind, are these active sentences or are these passive sentences? My father owns an electronics store. He wakes up early every day to open the store. He considers it his pride and joy. Being a business owner was always a dream of his. He works diligently to make sure the store is clean and always stocked with the latest devices. He has a strong sense of duty due to his many years of service in the Navy. Unfortunately, the electronics store was robbed last night. A window was broken, 5 televisions and 12 computers were stolen. Sadly, my dad's pocket watch was stolen from his desk. It was an heirloom given to him by his father. It was supposed to be passed on to me. Finally, all of the money was stolen from the safe. I really hope the pocket watch will be recovered. So we had a lot of our sentences change there, especially when we talked about the things that were taken, passive voice, such as a window was broken, 5 televisions and 12 computers were stolen, my dad's pocket watch was stolen, and all of the money was stolen from the safe. So these are good examples of switching from active to passive because the focus is on the things that were stolen, right? The focus isn't on who did it or that robbers came in. Really, the idea that we're focusing on here is the fact that his store was robbed, and we don't really know who robbed the store. Be aware that not all verbs can be changed to the passive voice. So some verbs, which are called intransitive verbs, cannot be changed. We'll be talking about those in future lessons, so stay tuned for that. Some examples of intransitive verbs that cannot be used in passive are arrive, come, go, cry, sleep, die, and walk. Those are verbs that cannot take an object, right? You cannot arrive something, right? Remember before I said that you need to ask that question, what, right? They stole. They stole what? The painting. So that takes an object. So steal is a transitive verb. But these examples are intransitive verbs. So let's look at some of these. You can't cry something. You either cry or you don't. You can't die something, right? That's an intransitive verb. However, you can kill something. That is a transitive verb. You can't go something or sleep something. So stay tuned for my future lesson on intransitive verbs, where you'll learn a little bit more about those verbs and why we can't use them in the passive form. For more examples and some questions, take a look at our Facebook page and our Twitter, where we're going to give you examples of active sentences and have you change them to passive. And we'll also have some examples of sentences and have you decide which one is best, the active voice or the passive voice. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please press the subscribe button and the bell button next to it so you can get all the newest Explore English lessons. Also, visit our Patreon account. For as little as $2 a month, you can help us bring you even more English lessons. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. See you next time.